you have a morning routine? Of course you do. The alarm, the coffee, the shower, the rush to get out the door. It's so automatic you barely think about it anymore. But here's what most owners never consider. Your dog has been watching that routine every single morning, and somewhere inside it, there is something you do, probably without even noticing, that sends your dog's stress levels spiking before you've even left the house. They don't bark. They don't make a scene. They just absorb it, quietly, every single day. And by the time you're in your car, something is already happening inside them that you won't see until the damage has been building for months. Let's start with what's really going on. 1. Your morning routine is a countdown they can't escape. Have you ever noticed your dog start to act differently before you leave? Even well before you actually walk out the door? Maybe they follow you more closely while you're getting dressed. Maybe they settle into a specific spot and just watch you with that particular stillness. Maybe they sigh. Maybe they start pacing. And you haven't done anything yet. You haven't picked up your keys. You haven't put on your shoes. You're still in the kitchen making coffee. Here's what's happening. Your dog has memorized your morning routine in extraordinary detail. Not just the obvious parts, the keys, the bag, the coat, but the entire sequence that leads up to them. The specific sound of your alarm versus your weekend alarm. The order in which you move through the house. The difference in your pace when you're running on time versus running late. The smell of you getting ready to leave versus getting ready to stay home. They've been mapping this for as long as you've had them, and they know exactly what every signal means. Research on canine departure cues has established that dogs begin showing signs of anxiety in response to pre-departure signals long before their owner actually leaves. A review published in the Journal of the American Veterinary Medical Association in 2021, drawing on findings from Flanagan and Dodman, found that signs of distress at departure cues, picking up keys, putting on coats, reaching for bags, occurred twice as often in dogs with separation anxiety compared to dogs without it. Those cues don't just affect dogs already diagnosed with separation anxiety. They affect every dog who has learnt to associate them with what comes next. Your dog isn't being dramatic. They're doing exactly what evolution built them to do, tracking patterns in the behavior of the most important creature in their world and preparing for what those patterns predict. The problem is that what they've learned to predict is your absence. And the moment that prediction kicks in, the stress response has already started. You're still in the house, and your dog is already bracing for you to leave it. And this is only the surface of what's happening. By the end of this video, you'll understand the one specific piece of the morning routine that most owners never think to change. The one that sets the emotional tone for your dog's entire day, and what to do instead. Stay with this. 2. The goodbye is doing more damage than the leaving. How do you say goodbye to your dog when you leave in the morning? Be honest. Do you crouch down and give them a long cuddle? Do you tell them you love them in the voice you'd never use in public? Do you look back at them through the closing door and feel your heart pulse slightly? Most owners do some version of this. It feels like the right thing. It feels like love. And it is love. The problem is what it does to your dog. Here's what most owners don't understand. When you make your departure emotionally intense, when the goodbye is full of drawn-out affection, prolonged eye contact, anxious energy, whispered apologies, you are teaching your dog that leaving is a significant event. Something that warrants grief. Something to brace for. Your emotional state before departure is information your dog reads with extraordinary precision. And an owner who is tense, guilty, or unusually affectionate right before leaving is an owner whose body is broadcasting. Something big is about to happen, and I'm not sure it's okay. Veterinary behaviorists have long recommended low arousal departures as a core component of separation anxiety treatment precisely because of this dynamic. When departures are calm, brief, and unremarkable, they send a different message. This is a normal, small thing that happens and resolves. When departures are emotional events, even warmly emotional ones, they elevate the moment into something that deserves to be felt and grieved. A study by McGreevy and Masters, published in Applied Animal Behavior Science in 2008, found that dogs whose owners engaged in high arousal interactions with them within the first 30 minutes of returning home were more likely to display separation-related behaviors. The reunion was teaching the dog that the owner's presence was an intense, arousal-triggering event, which made the owner's absence the inverse of that intensity. The bigger the hello, the bigger the hole left when you're gone. You don't need to stop loving your dog at the door. You need to change how that love sounds. A calm word, A brief touch. A quiet departure that says, "This is nothing, I'll be back." We do this every day, because to a dog, the emotional weight you put on the goodbye is exactly the emotional weight they'll carry while you're gone. 3. You're skipping the one thing that changes everything. Here's the piece of the morning routine that most owners never connect to their dog's stress levels. Not the departure, not the goodbye. Something that happens before any of that. Something that most owners skip entirely because mornings are already rushed and it feels optional. Exercise. A dog that has had no physical outlet before you leave is a dog whose body is primed with morning energy that has nowhere to go. Dogs have a natural cortisol rise in the morning, the same alertness hormone that helps them engage with the day. This is healthy and normal. But cortisol that has been activated and then given nothing to do doesn't just disappear, it builds. Behavioral researchers have documented what practitioners call cortisol stacking, a process where repeated stress events across a day compound on each other, because the cortisol from each event hasn't fully cleared before the next one arrives. Elevated morning cortisol, combined with the stress of departure cues, combined with the stress of being left alone, can create a dog who spends the first hours of their day in a state of physiological distress that has nothing to do with how loved they are or how good their owner is. It has to do with chemistry that was never given a chance to level out before the day began. A morning walk before departure, even 15 to 20 minutes, does something measurable for your dog's internal state. It burns the activated cortisol through movement. It gives the hunting instinct a chance to express itself through sniffing and exploring. It brings the nervous system down before the stress of departure is added on top of it. A tired dog is a calmer dog. But more specifically, a dog whose body has already processed its morning energy is a dog who has far more capacity to rest through your absence rather than pace through it. Research from Tierra and Lohi, published in PLOS ONE in 2015, found that exercise was among the environmental factors significantly associated with reduced canine anxiety. Dogs who received more regular physical activity showed lower rates of anxiety-related behaviors than those who did not, even when other variables were controlled. The morning walk isn't optional enrichment. For a dog who struggles when you leave, it's one of the most direct interventions available to you. And most owners skip it because they're running late. And hey, if this is already making you see your morning routine differently, hit like and subscribe. We're here to help dog owners understand what their dog has been quietly living with, and more people need to hear this before it becomes a bigger problem than it needs to be. 4. Your chaos is their crisis. What does your morning actually look like? Be honest. Is it calm and structured? Or is it the kind of morning where you're hitting snooze twice, then rushing through everything, half-dressed and distracted, throwing food in a bowl while simultaneously looking for your keys and answering a message on your phone? For most people, the answer is the second one. And for most dogs, that morning chaos registers as something specific and significant, not mild disorder. Actual threat. Dogs are hardwired to read the emotional state and behavioral patterns of the people they're bonded to. When those patterns are consistent, your dog's nervous system stays calibrated. They know what's coming. They know how to prepare. But when the morning is unpredictable, when some days are rushed and frantic, and others are calm, when you move through the house in a different order, when your energy spikes without warning, your dog cannot read what's coming next. The Animal Welfare Journal published research on separation anxiety and predictability, examining how unpredictability in an owner's departure behavior directly worsened dogs' stress response during separation. The recommendation from the authors was counterintuitive to many owners: increase the predictability of departures rather than trying to mask or vary them. A dog who knows what's coming can prepare for it. A dog who is always guessing is always slightly on edge. This doesn't mean your morning has to be a silent, rigid ceremony. It means your dog benefits from seeing the same general shape of events in roughly the same order at roughly the same time. The alarm, the walk, the food, the getting ready, the departure. When those beats are consistent, your dog can track them without stress. They know where they are in the sequence. They know what's next. And that knowledge, that simple predictability, is one of the most powerful calming tools available to a dog who worries about being left. 5. What happens in the first 30 minutes after you leave? Most owners think about their dog's experience of being alone in general terms. They were fine when I got home. They didn't destroy anything. They seem okay. But research paints a much more specific and more distressing picture of what actually happens in the window immediately following your departure. Studies on canine separation behavior, including foundational work reviewed in the Journal of the American Veterinary Medical Association, have found that separation-related behaviors in dogs occur primarily within the first 15 to 30 minutes after the owner leaves. This is not a gradual settling-in process for affected dogs. It's an acute stress response that peaks in the first half hour, and then for many dogs gradually reduces as time passes and the dog's nervous system accepts the situation. What this means is that everything you do in the morning before you leave has an outsized impact on those first 30 minutes. A dog who has been walked, whose morning was predictable, whose owner left calmly and briefly, enters those 30 minutes with a lower starting stress level. They have more capacity to absorb the discomfort of your absence before hitting their threshold. A dog who has had no exercise, whose morning was chaotic, whose owner said a prolonged guilt-laden goodbye, enters those same 30 minutes already elevated. They hit their threshold faster. The behaviors that follow, the vocalizing, the pacing, the destruction, aren't random. They're the predictable output of a stress response that was already high before the door closed. This is also why the popular belief that dogs get used to it after you've been gone a while is partially true and partially dangerous. Yes, many dogs do settle after the acute stress peak, but settling after a stress peak is not the same as not having experienced that peak. The distress happened. The cortisol spiked. The nervous system went into a crisis response. The fact that they looked okay when you got home doesn't mean the morning was okay. 6. The one myth about mornings that's making everything worse. Here's something most owners have heard and believed and acted on, and that research has started to complicate. The advice that you should completely ignore your dog before you leave. No eye contact, no affection, no acknowledgement. Make yourself a neutral, invisible presence as you get ready so that your departure feels like nothing. This advice has been widely distributed, and the instinct behind it is understandable. If you make a big deal of leaving, the dog makes a big deal of you leaving. So make nothing of it. But a 2021 study by Teixeira and Hall at Texas Tech University, published in the Journal of Veterinary Behavior, found something that challenged this assumption. When they examined 1,990 dogs, comparing those with and without separation anxiety based on their owner's departure and greeting behavior, they found no meaningful difference between the two groups in terms of how dramatically their owners behaved at departure. High-arousal departures did not predict separation anxiety, and notably completely ignoring the dog. The advice most commonly given was not associated with better outcomes either. What the research actually supports is calm acknowledgement rather than either extreme. Not the dramatic farewell, not the deliberate cold shoulder, a brief, warm, low-key exchange. Something that tells your dog, I see you, I'm going. This is normal, I'll be back. That message, delivered in a calm tone with relaxed body language, serves the dog far better than either emotional intensity or studied indifference. Completely ignoring your dog before you leave doesn't teach them that your departure is no big deal. It teaches them that something is off about this particular part of the morning, the part where you stop making eye contact. And for a dog who tracks your behavior with the precision they bring to everything else, that pattern of sudden absence is itself a departure cue. You've just added a new signal to the countdown. 7. What the dogs who cope best have in common. Not every dog struggles when their owner leaves. Some dogs, even dogs left alone for hours, handle it with relative ease. What's different about them? What do their mornings look like? Research into canine resilience and separation behavior points consistently to the same set of conditions. These dogs have predictable routines. Their owners leave in roughly the same way at roughly the same time with roughly the same emotional register. They've had some physical activity before the departure. They've been given something to do during the absence. A food dispensing toy, a chew, something that occupies their mind in the first critical window after the owner leaves. And their owner's departure is treated as a normal, unremarkable event rather than a loaded moment in either direction. The food puzzle, or stuffed Kong specifically, deserves attention here. Providing a long-lasting food reward at departure, something your dog only gets when you leave, does two things simultaneously. It gives them a positive association with the thing that previously predicted distress, and it occupies their mind during the first 15 to 30 minutes, the most acute stress window, replacing anxious scanning of the empty house with the focused, calming activity of working for food. Behavioral practitioners recommend making the departure reward something genuinely special, a level of food reward your dog doesn't get at any other time, so that your leaving becomes the cue for something they actually look forward to. This isn't a trick, it's classical conditioning redirected. Your dog can't not associate your departure with what consistently follows it. The question is what you want that to be. Right now, for most dogs, the departure is associated with stress. It doesn't have to be. With consistency and time, it can become associated with the thing they get only when you leave. And a dog whose brain is saying, "Oh good, the Kong is coming," is a very different dog from the one bracing for hours alone on an already elevated nervous system. 8. The morning that changes everything. Here's what a morning that actually serves your dog looks like. It doesn't require getting up an hour earlier. It doesn't require a dramatic overhaul of everything you do. It requires a few deliberate changes to a routine you're already running on autopilot. The alarm goes off at the same time. That consistency alone tells your dog something. You get up, and relatively soon, before the house gets busy and frantic, you take them out. Not a sprint, a walk. 20 minutes minimum, with time to sniff, which is the part that matters most, neurologically. Sniffing activates a calming, focused state in dogs in a way that physical exercise alone doesn't fully replicate. Let them lead with their nose. That's the part that counts. You come back. You feed them. The morning moves through its normal beats in its normal order. You get ready without rushing, or at least without letting the rush bleed into your interactions with your dog. You prepare their Kong or food puzzle, and set it somewhere they'll find it after you leave. You say goodbye simply. One warm word, a brief touch, nothing prolonged, nothing guilty. You walk out, and behind that closed door, your dog noses toward their puzzle. Their nervous system is lower than it would have been. The morning made sense. The departure was familiar. There is something to do right now. The crisis that used to happen in the first 30 minutes has somewhere else to go. That's not a guarantee. Some dogs need more support than a morning routine can provide. Veterinary behavioral assessment, environmental modification, sometimes medication alongside behavior modification. If your dog is truly struggling when you leave, the morning is the start, not the whole answer. But for most dogs, the morning is where the day is set. And most mornings, without anyone meaning any harm, they're being set wrong, not because their owners don't love them, because no one ever told them what their dog's morning actually feels like from the inside. Now you know, and that changes what you can do about it.